be starting soon.
All right, whenever you're ready, take your time.
Episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I am your host and moderator, Cypher here. Today I am joined by Fresh Faces and New Ideas. Fresh Faces, New Ideas, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself before we get into the news, just in case nobody has seen you before.
Okay. Hi, I'm Fresh Faces New Ideas. I do Twitch streaming for politics. I've tried to do some video games. They happen from time to time. People have not tuned into them, so we'll play around with that later. As of right now, I generally stream 1 p.m. EST during the week. If you want to follow me, you can join me at twitch.tv/Fresh Faces New Ideas. You can follow me at Faces Ideas on Twitter. If you go to the Twitter page, it has links to my Discord, my Twitch, my YouTube. I think it also has my Instagram, but I don't really use that. So any of those. So, I'm always open to have conversations with people. I generally do politics, streaming. I am on the left in terms of politics. I'm like a Bernie bro. But other than that, I'm just happy to be here, happy talking to people. Always looking to help have conversations. I enjoy this.
Mm-hmm. Hold on a second. I gotta get used to doing this. Okay. Well, we're always glad to have you on the show, Fresh Faces. I hope that you are prepared to talk about the news that was over the last 2 weeks, because we were off last week because I was traveling home to visit family it's been a while due to COVID and all that jazz. Before we get into the news roundup, I just want to highlight what you're seeing above me here, which is the donation goals and what we've actually got in terms of donations for the charity stream that we hosted 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
go ahead.
I don't see any of those. So if you want to send me a link, if you want to,
I can send you a link,
and then I can put those in my chat for people.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to drop a link to you. I'll do that in Discord, Fresh Faces.
Yeah.
And then I'll drop the link to the whole rigmarole of what the charity stream was. The links are there within the section where it says donation links. It's just easier because they have to have each individual place that we raised money for and are still raising money for. We won't close it out until the end of the month. Is in this document, so that is easier to give to everyone. I just sent the whole document. And it's just a Google Doc, and you can find the information there and who we had on and the kind of things that we did during the charity stream. But as you can see above, if you're watching if you're tuning in on the VOD later or you're watching live now, we raised money for the Bob Woodruff Family Foundation, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and Austin Pets Alive. We actually exceeded our goal. Our goal was to raise a total of $500 throughout the entire charity stream, and we actually, during our 24-hour charity stream, managed to raise $1,400 and $1,446. So we actually almost tripled the amount of money that we were actually trying to raise. And it was a great time. I was very, very tired at the end of it, but we Crowdsource Politics and Guest will be doing this probably once every other month, but it won't be 24 hours each time. It'll probably be just 12 hours going forward because I was dead after about 15. But yes, we are still raising money for these charities, and you can find those links to the charities within that document that I had just dropped there. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this now just so that it doesn't interrupt us in case we do get some donations during the thing. But yeah, Fresh Faces, what is new in your world? How's school and everything going? And then we'll get into the news after we do a little banter.
Oh, I'm not in school.
Oh, not school. Sorry.
I'm 28.
Oh, okay. You look young like I do.
So. Yeah, I it's been a while since I've been mistaken for somebody at school, but no, things are good. Mostly I do the streaming. Today we talked to Blind Tio. I don't know if you know him. He's apparently on the political podcast Discord. Okay. He does some of his own stuff. I was talking to him on the Alex Kirsch project last week, so we were talking about the activism he's done. He's a little bit older than I am, so he was talking about the anti-Iraq war activism, the Occupy Wall Street stuff that he was doing, and we were just discussing how the left has evolved over the last couple of years. He gave me an interesting interesting documentary that I'll check out, probably try to watch on stream at some point. But yeah.
All right, cool. I shaved because we met the donation goal. That's why I look all baby face right now. But as far as stuff that's going on with me, everybody, I'm just working lately because I'm in Texas, so everybody that's been paying attention to COVID knows that Texas is a shit show again. We'll definitely talk about that. But yeah, I haven't had much in the way of going on except I visited family last week, and I'm celebrating my anniversary this weekend with my lovely wife. So we'll be doing that, just doing it chill. Not going to have a huge thing because COVID, but we'll be having a good time. So on the news roundup today, we are going to be covering a slew of topics, things ranging from COVID to the special election that happened in Ohio last week, and giving kind of our analysis for all these kind of things there. Fresh Faces, you got a chance to look at the news document dump. Is there anything that you wanted to cover first by chance?
The COVID stuff is mostly what I did a lot of. The politics for the under the politics, the Cuomo stuff. So I'm actually in New York, so I was covering that yesterday.
Okay.
When that happened right as I was about to stream. The climate change stuff scares the hell out of me. But other than that, yeah, that was not a fun day to wake up to. But other than that, yeah, the COVID stuff is really like, it just dominates the news. It's just so unbelievable. And the Afghan ridiculous stuff, I based on this document, I did read the Dick Cheney almost died thing, and then we have the other troops that are going in today or soon.
Yeah, that's a thing that we probably should talk about. So because it's developing, right? It broke like an hour or two ago.
Yeah, it broke like earlier today. So my understanding is basically because the Afghan army was, I guess, less trained and less prepared than we expected them to be. We have to send in extra troops temporarily to make sure that we can actually do our evacuations. So we basically don't end up with another Vietnam.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's looking like it is kind of a Vietnam, but the President Biden has said that we will be sending 3,000 troops into Afghanistan. This is 3 divisions, infantry divisions, and their primary purpose is to ensure the safe evacuation of U.S. personnel from everywhere except basically the Kabul embassy, as well as ensuring that the translators and Afghanis that worked with us and have been or are in the process of being approved for visa into the United States are also able to get extricated from the from Afghanistan. And this is coming on the cusp of just about to be finished with the full pullout of all U.S. forces of Afghanistan. One other thing, in addition to the 3,000 troops that are headed back towards Afghanistan in order to assure that that we're able to safely pull our people out and our allies, there's additional 3,000 airborne forces being stationed in Kuwait to be on standby in case things really hit the fan and the Taliban forces decide to try to kill American forces. So this could see it quickly devolve back into having 6,000 troops landed back into Afghanistan, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. What do you think?
Look, I think the fact that the Afghan security forces, the Afghan army collapsed so quickly is very telling that we're very bad at nation building. We spent basically 20 years trying to build this army up, and it wasn't effective. I mean, look, we knew the army guys have talked about that. They knew there was going to be some type of pushback as we pulled out, and the answer can't just be we're going to stay there forever. That's
right.
That's a reasonable thing that could happen. So we, I guess the answer really was, should we have been there in the first place, and how do we take lessons for the next time that we want to go have a ground war with some other country in the Middle East? Can we clearly learn at some point that we're bad at this?
I mean, I was stationed in Afghanistan, so it doesn't what's a good way to say this? It doesn't surprise me that the Afghan local forces pulled back so much simply because there's no guarantee that their families can be kept safe while they are within the areas that the Taliban are controlling. With that said, I think there should be a distinction made between the general Afghan military and Afghan police and the Afghan special forces. The Afghan special forces are actually very well trained. They were instrumental in taking High Valley targets along with coalition forces throughout the Afghan campaign. And I think what we're seeing here isn't so much that they collapsed, like they weren't good at fighting. It's more like, what's the point of fighting if there's no one going to be there to have our back? And the Taliban is just going to be brutal and ruthless to the people, and killing family members and the like as well.
No, I that makes sense. I understand that. It's also like, look, we're gonna have to figure out, when the dust settles, it's going to seem like the Taliban's going to control possibly all of the country, if not a good chunk of it. So we're going to have to figure out some type of diplomatic way to deal with this, and it can't just be, we're not going to deal with the Taliban in any way, shape, or form, because that honestly won't really affect anything. We have to, we're going to have to figure out how to negotiate with both sides on this, because the answer, it can't just be us going back in.
For sure. I do. Do you think that it would have been worthwhile, in your opinion, to maintain forces in Afghanistan to try to we didn't really do anything to really bring the Taliban to heel, like from a long-term perspective, but to keep our forces in country while the Afghan government and the Taliban were negotiating a measured peace deal? Do you think that would have been useful, or do you think it wouldn't have mattered?
I guess it depends on how much damage that having our presence there would have done to bolster the Taliban's cause, because we have to weigh the fact that a lot of what the Taliban was doing was basically just saying, "Oh, look, the Americans are here," and then whether us being there while they did this was a way for them to like pretend that they were going to make these concessions that they ultimately weren't, and then that they would ultimately just lie and break it. It's both how long do you have to trust them, and then what is, at some point there had to be an end game. So yeah, having more troops on the ground might have helped us, but if we'd been here for this long anyway, it would have been I don't know where the end game would have been, because I know they were supposed to negotiate with Trump, and then we had this pullout deadline, and then Biden extended the pullout deadline, and I don't know. I don't think I don't know if it would have really made that much of a difference.
I think that's very fair. And to put this in perspective, I'm going to go ahead and throw up the control map. It's been updated 7 hours ago, according to the BBC. Just give me a second while I go ahead and get this shared back. But yeah, I think that's fair, and I do take your Sorry, I do take what you're saying into heart about whether or not take to heart whether or not, sorry, this is bugging me, whether or not the Taliban were just lying in wait, and it really does seem that they were for the most part, and they told us straight up that that's what they were going to do. So can you see the screen? Are you able to see it?
Yeah, I can see this. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me go to commentary while it loads. Come on. Uh-oh. Oh, man. Oh, wait. I know what this is. Sorry, everybody. I'm getting used to this new program still. It's bugging me. There we go. That should show them. Oh, that is the wrong one. There we go. So you can see on the screen here, everybody, is that this is what the map looks like as far as how the Taliban is controlling Afghanistan. So the map, the red parts are places where the Taliban has control. Bluish green parts are where the Afghan government has control, and the yellow parts are contested. What they essentially have done here, and I'm sure that Fresh Faces, you've read this, is that they have essentially taken over much of the rural parts of Afghanistan, and that's the kind of parts that they had control of during while American forces were there. Herat and what was it? Herat and I gotta look at the map to get the name. Lashkar Gar and yeah, those were the two major areas where the Taliban had been making gains repeatedly. So they would take over an area, pull back, take over an area, pull back. After U.S. forces would troop surge into the area. But what you see in here is essentially what the Taliban has controlled the entire time. Now the issue here is that the Afghan army has pulled back into basically Kabul and Kandahar, and the worry is that the Taliban will be able to mass forces onto one city, take it over, and then eventually move on to Kabul. And with people fleeing Kabul and Kandahar, that might make it that much easier for them to take over. And this is happening way quicker than the United States military or government had anticipated that this would potentially happen. So it is not lost on me that this is really a shit show, to be honest. But yeah, I hope. What do you think? Do you think Kabul's gonna fall like in a week or two, or what's up?
Well, is it well, I don't. The military reporting is they think it's 90 days, right? That's I think was the most recent reporting that I saw. I have no idea. Look, the issue is if Kabul and Kandahar fall, then we're going to end up with a flood of refugees, which, as we've seen in the past, when some type of Middle Eastern conflict expands to refugees, we do a really good job of helping them out, and there's no fear mongering at all. It's not like an entire country like Turkey basically. Was it Turkey? Yeah, I think it was Turkey. Wherever Tucker Carlson just went, didn't use them as hostages to fearmonger about how Germany has collapsed because of them. So it's
that was Hungary, I think. So yeah, but I get your point.
Yeah, so it's all I don't know, because we can't tell, and I don't know where we go from here. I don't have the military experience to look at this in a way, and I haven't directly looked into it enough to see who exactly would benefit from it.
Yeah, I do think 90 days is probably a good estimate, honestly. From this, we did have a question from North Countryman asking, do we see the anti-Taliban militias having any effect at this point? My answer for that is no. a lot of them have either been bought off or they're just much weaker than they were during the initial phases of the Afghan conflict, that I don't see them being bringing much of anything to the table at all, especially if Pakistan is continuing to back the Taliban, which it seems like that they are.
I also have a chatter who's talking about potentially Russian forces on the border as well that might have thrown the insurgency back. I don't know anything about that. Yeah, I haven't seen anything. This is a new person that they were just talking about. But look, I imagine having hold on one second. Having a power gap there would ultimately affect this nation. So it'll either be Russia or China who I guess would move in to secure that power vacuum, to try to bolster whoever's in charge, so that they can help shape the country, help get all the resources or shift it. So that is obviously an issue that we have to, see as a potential future issue as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's also interesting that the Chinese had said that the U.S. was abandoning a position that if you break it, they were making the argument, if you break it, you buy it kind of thing. But it's interesting to me that China was making this point, because a lot of the natural resources that Afghanistan has, Chinese companies themselves have actually won contracts to either mine them on behalf of the Afghan government, or to mine them themselves to actually sell later through leasing agreements or what have you. And so it's possible, but not likely, like very low possibility, honestly. But it's still possible that Chinese military might get involved or make negotiations with the Taliban in order to ensure that their natural resource extraction is still being maintained. So I think that would be interesting as well. That's something that I think everybody should be paying attention to in the weeks going forward. Yeah. North Countryman's also saying the ethnic divisions between the northern group's leaders and the elites in Kabul probably doesn't help. Yeah, that's true as well. Adam Muhammad Noor is who I have in mind. Yep. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying here. And the Northern Alliance is not as strong as it once was either. They're much weaker than they were prior to the invasion of Afghanistan, to be honest, at this point. I think we did that topic justice. I mean, you said yourself you've done a lot of talking about COVID and that, and we've been doing that a lot as well. But I do think it's worth mentioning that, or at least talking about the states that are refusing to implement mask mandates for students, and how the states are being fought against by local governments.
Yeah, no. So it's mostly the most prominent. It's Texas and Florida. Texas has, I think it's 6 counties are in the courts. I know San Antonio and one other one just won, so they're going to implement. But look, even the states that aren't doing it, we're seeing like in Georgia and Missouri, I think it is, we're seeing like massive amount of kids getting sick or from COVID, or being diagnosed with COVID, or they're closing. They're closing their schools with this. Like, look, the talking point could ultimately be, if they don't do any type of mitigation and it comes down to schools having to shut down, or they have to go into some type of hybrid learning of, oh, look, do you see the Democrats are obviously trying to make this worse. But the reality of this is like, the Republican Party really should be standing on its own on this. The libertarian parties and these other anti-government groups who are like, say, we can make our own choices, or you don't have to mandate things. The second part of that is because we're doing the right thing ourselves, and they're not. They're basically arguing the same point that the Republican Party is arguing, which is we're not going to do anything to mitigate this. And let's also be clear: there are other groups than just Republicans who aren't. Who are hesitant to take the vaccine. There are African American groups. There are other, groups. And I understand that, that have the histories and stuff. But like, what is the point? Like, how do you, if we were in some type of way that there was some type of secondary argument that they could make to mitigate this. Because at this point, the answer is, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to go about my day however I choose and pretend this isn't a real thing, because any type of mitigation they're against. I don't know if you saw the clips from, I think it was Tennessee at the board meeting where they were like yelling at the doctors. These were just like medical professionals. And then San Francisco is requiring their police officers to be vaccinated. And it's like 23% of them are like, no, I'm going to quit if you require it. It's like, what is happening here? It like the goal to deal with this is just being prolonged by this. It's just nonsense talking points. And you're at this point, you're just hurting your own voters.
Yeah. No, that's very true. I think a lot of it has to do, as everybody that's watching is aware, like a lot of the disinformation that we are dealing with in terms of the vaccine and its effectiveness, as well as there's a thing as first exposure bias, and a lot of people that were told about COVID in general. Believed that if you were healthy, if you weren't fat, you weren't going to get sick. And for the first variant, the first version of COVID-19, that was kind of true. It wasn't like true. It wasn't like 100%, but it was more true then than it is now. And we were seeing kids, young kids getting long COVID from COVID exposure. And while their symptoms were very mild and they might have not even gotten sick, they're coming back, a month or two later with this sudden onset, not respiratory virus, but it's a condition where the blood vessels are basically targeting your own body. And it's causing damage, and it's causing basically, the way I like to tell people this is that imagine that you're 15 years old, but you feel like you're 30. And that's what's happening to a lot of these kids. Not a lot of these kids, but I'm saying the kids that this happens to. It's still lower than it is in adults, but it's still happening to children. And I think, and I said this on Twitter, and I said this on my own Facebook group, and gotten some pushback because, everybody's like, well, what about my kid? My kid needs school because they're special needs or what have you. But I think it would behoove us to, if your state isn't implementing mask mandates for students, to pull them out of school until if they give the option to do remote learning. I think that's what most people should do at this point, because the vaccine for children is likely to happen by, I'll say, January. And you're really, that's 4 months, 5 months. It's not really that big of a deal to not go to school for that amount of time. I'm not saying don't teach them or anything, but I'm saying to not go to school physically. The school, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I think we have to weigh the risk of getting long COVID, of going to the ICU or what have you, to the risk of not socializing and the damages that does. And I know that a lot of people are of the mind that that the latter, the not going to school, not socializing, is worse than the former because it's a higher chance. But I just don't know if I see it that way personally.
No, look, I agree. I think I've been very clear about this. The only people in this country who shouldn't be vaccinated are people who are immunocompromised, although they're now arguing that you should get a third dose if you're immunocompromised. That came out recently. And people who are under 12. Everyone else should really just be wearing a mask. Because, look, do we have some type of knowledge of the kids who have died from, because this is what they argue. They're like, oh, it's a health risk to them. Do we have a statistic, even a fake statistic of kids who have died from wearing a mask? It's just like even the VAERS statistics, where is this something you could poke at? That would be it. But yes, obviously your kid not interacting is a problem with them. But the long COVID stuff comes to the same thing where people argue, oh, it's a 1% death rate. It's like, Yeah, but we're not just it's not like if you don't survive, you don't just go skipping down the hall. You could have other issues if you survive, and then like you were talking about the long COVID, and then the other thing is maybe you survive, but you're the other 4 people you infected also survive, but maybe they have long COVID. This isn't, or the people who like argue that this is, oh, it's my body, my choice. But like if I'm a woman and I have an abortion, the next 4 women next to me don't get pregnant and get aborted. It's like, how do you spread this? It's a community thing at this point. We want the maximum number of people safe, and this is like the least you can. It's literally the least you can do is to put on a mask.
Yeah, I do find it. I find it interesting that masks have become so much of a sticking point for a lot of people. Like they're calling it a muzzle. They're saying this is a gateway to tyranny and everything like that. And it's really not. Like you might have to talk a little louder in order for people to hear you, but that's about it. Like I honestly don't get it.
And the craziest thing is, like, the fact that they made this, the Republican Party made this a wedge issue is wild. Like, could you have imagined how much of a grift you could have run off if you sold, like, Donald Trump masks or MAGA masks? Like, I can't believe his like actual greed for robbing his supporters blind didn't overwhelm his sense of whatever nonsense he was speaking. Like, he would have made so much money selling Trump masks. Like, it is incredible.
For sure. Yeah. And they did do that. There was, I saw it a lot in like, gun stores and like other places. Like it's a mask and it says printed on the front, "This is useless." And yeah, it's funny. But at least they're wearing one, right? We do have a couple. Go ahead.
No, you're right. I agree. At least they're wearing one.
Yeah. We do have a comment coming in from maybe isn't me. They've made up their mind. I'll just quote them directly. "I've made up my mind. Any show we do, the guest must be vaccinated and must mask. We all have been out of work for 18 months as far as touring is concerned. And we have no unemployment, no unions, not taking any chances for those who refuse to use their heads." And I think that's probably the best thing that you can do. Maybe it isn't me. I know that you are a pretty prolific performer. And if this is what you have to do in order to continue to performing and making money, then yeah, that's probably the best thing that you can do, honestly. I don't know. Do you have anything you want to comment on that?
I don't think so. Look, it's just the people who are going to force us to people to get vaccinated are going to be businesses, just because it's the people they don't trust the government. They don't want to believe the scientists. They're going to be forced to do it by work. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's going to be that. It's probably going to be schools too. I do think it's interesting that a lot of the people that are like, you have to have an ID in order to vote or whatever, are now looking for fake vaccine passports.
No, yeah, that is going to be a huge problem. And the other thing was, so let me ask you this. One of my somebody on my chat brought this up, that the woman in Germany who gave them the saline solution instead of the vaccine.
Was that Germany?
Yeah, it was in Germany.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to talk about what the punishment is, and I couldn't even figure out like what law would she actually have broken. That was what we were trying to figure out.
If it's the same story that I'm thinking of, it should be felonious reckless endangerment, because what they are doing is they not only did they circumvent their own rules and regulations, but they led people to believe that they were safe against COVID, and they weren't, which means that they were at risk of getting COVID and dying. So it would be the same thing to me as somebody that's drunk driving down the highway at 100 miles an hour. And that should be the kind of thing that the kind of punishment or the kind of charge they should receive, because it's, and it was so many people, like 3,000, 6,000 people, something like that.
Yeah, it was like 3,000 people that had to come back. It was like wild amount of doses. But that's the other thing. I think if you're like in a hospital, if you're in a hospital, and you refuse to take the vaccine, I think they should fire you, because at this point
they're
you're just
going
being
to.
good. They should.
They're going
And the
to
other
end up
thing
doing
is, people like the American frontline doctors, at this point they're just I don't know understand how they can like exist in the way that they do. It is they're literally getting people are eating fucking horse paste now because of them. Like someone was arguing with me about this and they're like that is such a fantasy land that this is a thing that can happen. Like the people, like there are other countries that have conspiracy theories kind of similar to us, but the difference is like when Europe got the conspiracy about vaccines causing autism, and it was debunked. They ran that doctor out. They took away his license. That doctor lives in America. He lives in Florida. He lives in a compound in Florida. And think how much damage that conspiracy has done for just across the board.
Yeah, no, yeah. And another thing. Actually, I lost the point that I was going to make, but the vaccine stuff that just promulgates out of the U.S. is just it's very strange to me. I don't have many people that I talk to that are not American, even though we're in the Twitch and political debate community. I don't get to talk to Keo much or any of those other people, but it seems like it's not just Americans, but it seems to me from my inside perspective and just reading the news of other places, it seems to be primarily Americans that's falling victim to this level of disinformation.
Well, we're already more conspiratorial anyway. Like there have been studies on it. Americans are more likely to believe in conspiracies anyway, and then especially this group that is falling for it is kind of similar to groups that have fallen into other things. They all kind of conglomerated, a lot of that's part of what led to the explosion of Q was people locked down and they ended up on the internet, and Facebook, radicalizes you, or you go on YouTube and you fall down a rabbit hole there. So that is another issue that we have to deal with.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. I did just remember the question I was going to ask you was, now we know that a person that's vaccinated can spread COVID pretty much as easily as an unvaccinated person. Do you think, knowing this information, that companies will be able to require people to get vaccinated and or be fired? Do you think that's something that's going to come to the courts, since it's not necessarily a protection against spreading it to other people, but getting it yourself?
No. So it's going to go to the courts anyway, obviously. But I think that is the wrong way to phrase it, because the other thing with that is, just because I can spread it as easily as somebody who's unvaccinated, if you're vaccinated, you can't catch it as easily as somebody who's unvaccinated. So regardless of the ability for it to spread, the ability to catch it is so dramatically less that it's basically a wash at that point, because the percentage of people who have breakthrough infections is like 0.004. And then whatever the regular number of the infection is like 10 to 15 times higher at a minimum. So yes, sense. It is true that I can spread it if I get it, but if I'm wearing a mask and you are vaccinated, the chance of you getting it is so infinitesimal that it's basically impossible.
Okay. And what is your thoughts about? And this is something that I've known for a long time, but it's just coming out into everybody else, with the amount of nurses that are anti-vaccine and are very much in the line of this like kind of weird conservative amalgamation of conspiracy and conservatism minded. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
It's fucking terrifying. Look, the fact that like between that and the doctors who are just willing to say whatever they want to get paid, it's like, why? What is the point? Like, so much of our issues is just because of like greed and the ability to make money off of stuff. Like, at what point is like, do you have no like morals? Like, what is an acceptable death toll for me to give you $1 million? Like, what? How is this like your problem? And also, if you're a nurse who's this conspiratorial, what the fuck did you go to school for? Like, you learned all this and you just don't believe the stuff that you learned? Like, how does that compute? It always is shocking to me to like listen to the like conservative talking points about things, because it's like, where is your how do you hold these these conflicting thoughts in your head for like every topic.
Yeah, I think I think part of that, at least with nurses, I can't speak for doctors, but a lot of it with nurses is that a lot of the people that went into the nursing profession just really wanted to help people. And it wasn't so much of like being this. Now, don't get me wrong, being a nurse is a very difficult job. It requires a ton of education, especially if you're working in major cities. The requirements of being a nurse isn't just like a nurse at a hospital isn't just 4 years of school. You need 4 years plus 2 years of like on the ground training. And in some cases, they want you to have your master's. So you need 5 years plus the 2 years of training. So don't get me wrong, I'm not talking shit about nurses. But the thing is like a lot of them went into nursing for the fact that, oh, I want to help people and make people feel comfortable in the hospital and like do my part or whatever. And it's not so much like on the science side of the house that they went into nursing for, but really that like interpersonal caring for others type of thing, for like a similar reason why you have a lot of people that want to be veterinarians, right? They want to be able to help animals. It's the same thing. So I think it's partly maybe that kind of mentality that makes it to where I'm not as shocked by it as others might be.
Okay, well then let me ask you this. If you go in to help people and you've been through this, how do you say that it's better to have people on ventilators than it is for them not to be on ventilators?
Well, they don't believe that the vaccine is a thing. Like they don't think that's the thing. Like you're still having people that are bamboozled or conspiracy minded in every single profession, so you're still going to have those people in there, but because of the fact that it's maybe the primary driver to be a nurse isn't discovery and like the medicine of it, it's because of the helping, that you might have a higher concentration of those people that might have that mentality in the profession.
I don't know, that's just it. Look, I think if you've been educated, even if you wanted to, help people, some of it should have been absorbed to the point that you can.
But fresh faces, these vaccines, we don't know what's in them. I heard they give autism.
Look. Here's the other thing. That's the thing that drives me crazy. So the people who say they didn't do enough testing. What do you, a person who doesn't have the training in any of this, think that needs to be tested that would make you take the vaccine, that the people who do this for a living didn't think about to test? Like, I have no idea what test they would. And if I had to think about it and I made a list of things, I'm sure they had checked all the things that I could think of, because that's what they do. So if like your argument is, oh, we don't know what's in it, you can look into it. If we gave you the chemical compounds of stuff, doesn't mean you know what you're looking at. Like, I could give you the chemical compound of an apple and tell it's a vaccine. You won't know the difference. Like just because, at some point you got to think, like, who do you, like, why is it that you only believe that the smallest group, the people who are most vocal about, there being a conspiracy theory, they're the ones that are believed? And like, I get it. It's incredibly frustrating for, doctors to deal with this, but like, it's just more frustrating to know that these are like the easy things that we could deal with, and that we haven't gotten to like actually asking difficult things of people. We're not asking you to, pick a loved one. We're not asking you to, or we're not even talking about like World War II stuff where people had to ration their supplies.
Right.
And things like that. We're asking you to go get in America, we're offering you free medicine for like the first time. And we're asking you to do that and to put on a mask. And that people are like, no.
Well, if you give me a free, but fresh faces, if I get the free vaccine, then I'm going to get the microchip implanted into me, and then the government will be able to track everything I do. Think, man.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You ain't that special. Nobody cares. First off, we don't have the technology for that. I mean, you were in the Army. How didn't you have to like track each other with programs? How effective were those?
I mean, I can't show you my cell phone right now, but we have that ability with our cell phone. So
yeah, even the cell phones, for us to be able to have put to understand how this would have had to work, they would have had to have miniaturized technology to a level that we don't have, and then figured out how to get it into every single vial, and then to make sure that like one or two of the chips were in every single injection to every single person. Like, again, this is also similar to the election stuff. The level of conspiracy that would have to happen is just so high and so wild and so widespread that people would be spilling the whistle all the time. If you get 8 people together, somebody's going to blab about what they're doing. We're talking millions of people to have done this.
No, for sure. I've been calling the. Okay, hold on. I can hear myself through your speakers.
You can hear that's I don't know how that happened.
If you might just move your mic a little closer.
Okay, let me turn my speakers down. Is that better?
Hello. Yeah, okay. I can't hear myself anymore. All right, so that was just throwing. Sorry, everybody. That was just throwing me off really bad. So what was I going to say? I don't even remember now. Honestly, I think we talked about the whole COVID thing enough at this point. One of the other things that I did definitely want to talk about was what happened in Ohio's 11th congressional district between Nina Turner and Brown. I don't remember her first name.
Chantel Brown.
Chantel Brown. And I know this has probably been talked about to death among the left, broadly speaking. But I think it's something that we definitely should cover because it does lead to some interesting things potentially about politics. So I'll just do a recap really quick so that everybody can be on the same page, and then we can banter a little bit. So Nina Turner was the darling of the left. She was the president of Our Revolution, OR, the Bernie Sanders PAC. I don't think it was super PAC, just a PAC that was born out of the Bernie Sanders 2016 presidential run. And it was basically the left's answer to being kind of partly shut out of democratic politics and trying to serve as an advocacy group for left-leaning ideas, things such as Medicare for all, which is the thing they pushed for the most. I was actually involved in Our Revolution in Austin, Texas, but when COVID happened, I stopped volunteering and participating and stuck back. So I don't know what they're doing here in Texas, but I knew that they got Medicare for all for Texas. They called it the Healthy Texas Act, where it's basically making Medicaid available to every single Texan on the government dime. They actually got that on the floor and had a debate on it, which is actually pretty big success for Texas politics, believe it or not. But she was up against Chantel Brown. Chantel Brown was backed by pretty much all the establishment. Hillary Clinton backed her. She got a ton of money from different groups, something along the lines of like $1.9 million or so from a AIPAC affiliated group, because I guess Turner is anti-Semitic now. I don't know how. Well,
we can talk about that in a minute. They're going to be a big part of what I'm talking about.
So. I don't know how that works, but when you actually looked at the math for this, Nina Turner actually raised more money overall, even when considering, at least that we know of. So everything that's been reported on from that, there was like a lefty meme that went around that was a chart that showed all the money, all the outside money. Outside money didn't include any of the money the candidates themselves raised. Nina raised on her own close to, was it 4 million?
I thought it was like 4.9.
Yeah, 4.9 million. So we'll say very close to 5 million on her own. And collectively, she was around like 5.5 million. And Chantel Brown was around, anywhere between like 4.9 and like 5.2. It was really hard to read those lines on that graph, so I gave it I gave a window of 400 to 700,000 in favor of Nina Turner. But despite raising more money, she still lost. Let's talk about it. Why did she lose? What happened there? Is this a death blow to the left, or is it just no one likes Nina Turner?
Well, it's certainly not a death blow to the left, because on the same day that Nina Turner lost, Cory Bush saved the housing for like 6 million Americans. So,
right.
you win some, you lose some. Cory Bush had lost it her first time. They're not all going to be AOC winning off the time. So Nina Turner, there's a lot going on here. Yes, obviously they raised about the same amount of money, but there's also Nina had some issues that just going into it. The area was pretty pro Biden, telling them that you voting for Biden is eating a bowl of shit is not a good message for that area. It certainly did not help. The PAC that you mentioned, there was a lot of right-wing money into this as well, but that PAC especially was running a lot of truly dishonest ads, things like Nina Turner is not in favor of $15 minimum wage or Medicare for all. Let me rephrase that. The PAC ran an ad. Base left, thank you for the follow. The PAC ran an ad saying Nina Turner did not want Medicare for all or $15 minimum wage. Like
that's crazy.
The level of that's like the thing. Like that was like how she came on to the So there was a lot of dishonesty there. The not covering up enough of the Chantel Brown and her actual scandals was a problem. But there was it's a lot. It's similar issues that she ran into similar issues that Bernie did. She ran into similar issues that Cenk did when he ran. We have to be better at messaging, especially when it comes to mainstream regular news media. We have to assume that they're going to misrepresent your positions, and you have to get out in front of people and discuss them in a better way. This was actually what I was talking to about with Blind Teo today. It's all about messaging. We have to figure out how to effectively message the things that we want in less scary terms. Obviously, there's going to be another fight. We're going to have a different progressive rise up for a different position. I'm a big fan of Rondale Jones. I'm a little biased because he is my congressman. Obviously, a gay black guy would certainly have a hard time winning, across the country. But I'm backing him. There's a lot to just dig into. I don't know I haven't looked at the actual polling data yet, so I don't know where we would stand with that.
You mean as far as how the demographics,
the exit polling and stuff?
Yeah, okay.
Because I had somebody who was telling me about where the polling data, so maybe that would help us with, seeing how well she actually campaigned in certain areas. Also, bringing Bernie in might have also been a mistake in that area, seeing how heavily Biden it was. Like having AOC there, but not having Bernie there would have also, because like when somebody like me sees, Bernie's coming, I'm getting excited, but I was already excited for that person. But if someone who's like, I'm pro Joe Biden and I think Bernie Sanders is too radical, that might have turned them off. So there's a lot to break down. Ultimately, as we learn from this, the hope is, obviously we can't say, oh, she raised more money, there's more outside. You have to assume that when you're running as a progressive, there's going to be outside money coming after you. There's only so much you can do. You have to find the right, message for pushing different, for pushing your stuff. You have to find the right, it can't all just be, because the policy points for progressives are popular. They win basically every polling position. Pretty much every state during the Democratic primary was positive for Medicare for all. It's just like you have to get through a whole lot of ridiculous messaging.
So when you say you have to get it over, I'm coming through your mic again.
Again? Oh, that's
yeah.
Weird. Yeah. All right, I lowered it. Is it still like that?
Hello?
You have to talk.
No. Yeah, I think it's when we talk at the same time, your mic doesn't cut off soon enough. So, but we're good now. So I think one of the things is that, like you were saying, a lot of liberals like the ideas that the left brings, but they don't like the rhetoric. I don't think they like the talk of revolution. I don't think they like the talk of being radical. This is a constant refrain by the anti-social justice left, so they don't like hearing things about, different identity politics issues, although that's starting to go away to a degree. But I do think that that was part of her issue, is that she tried to catch flies with shit and not honey, as the saying goes. And so I think that was primarily her biggest obstacle to winning. And I don't think she was very good at politicking because of that. She speaks her mind, which is great. You want somebody with that kind of fire to come in and be that kind of progressive, but not necessarily as a candidate. Maybe as a fighter, or a candidate maybe of a more left-leaning district than what Nina ran in. Because even though Biden won that district by like, I think it was like 70% or something ridiculous like that. It was a blowout of Trump, but that doesn't mean that they are liberal. Like, we know that black people in general tend to be skew more conservative than white people if they're part of the Democratic Party. Either socially or economically. So maybe the radicalism of that might not have appealed to them as much as it might appeal to you or I, or somebody that's actually considers like based communism, brother. Let's go, comrade, and go take care of the system, right? So I think that was probably her biggest obstacle there. It will be interesting to see if a more reserved tone leftist can win at all, though, because the left like their rabbit, or like their fiery people, and if they're not fiery, like a lot of it's like aesthetics, and so if you're not like aesthetically in their camp, they might not like you. So I'm wondering if that would appeal more to, the more moderate respectability politics people of the Democratic Party, and be able a way to navigate that. What do you think?
Well, when you say like less fiery, I think so. Mondaire Jones ran for Nita Lowey's seat. Nita Lowey was my congressperson for 30 years. There was like 14 people in that race, and he won pretty handily. So as far as I know, he wasn't throwing firebombs at people. He just ran, he had a pretty good record for what he was doing. He was for Medicare for all. He was endorsed by a lot of the Warren wing. So maybe that was a difference. But, you can't, as much as it, gets us up to point out, you say, Joe Biden has a really terrible track record for a lot of things. People really like Joe Biden. And we have to understand that while they are, you're right, that while they are okay with the ideas and sense, they don't want to be told that, hey, basically, the politicians that you've been picking for the last 30 years have been failing you. They could have done these things that you want. They just chose not to. We gotta balance the line. I guess if you're talking to, like, it's as weird as it is to be like kind of say two-faced. Now I'm hearing your mic. Get better. Like when you're talking to younger people, it might be better to be a little more fiery. But then when you're, having a conversation with more of an older crowd, you just change the rhetoric. And look, I don't even think that's two-faced. It's, the message. I'm not saying the message has to change. Just talk about, tone down the revolution. Because let's be clear, to any of these like socialist, communist Viva la Revolution, when they wrote this stuff, the idea of the peasantry rising up was a possibility. There's no possibility of the peasantry rising up to overthrow the bourgeoisie. It just doesn't exist in the way that they, Marx said Lenin wanted it to.
Yeah, we've gotten too fat and happy. Like, we are the fat cats that we want to overthrow, right? At this point, to a large extent, from a material condition perspective, a lot of people are comfortable enough that they're worried about losing what they have, at the idea that they could get more because they've never gotten more in their life, at least in our lifetimes, since like 1980 or so. It's not been completely stagnant, but it hasn't been like roaring, 1960s baby boom, right? So I think that's true. I wouldn't necessarily say, like what you were saying with changing up the rhetoric so much, like if you're talking to different crowds, maybe just couch it in different terms. I don't know. I don't know if that's like the same thing that you're saying. I think it would be, I don't think you can be like, yeah, revolution to young people and then to old people like, oh, I just want to like fix things. Like, I don't think you can have that anymore. There's too much media, there's too much video, there's too much out there where people will just be like, well, you're just bullshitting now, right? But I think if you could like maybe say you doing the Warren kind of policy wonkish thing, but with Beto's personality, I think that was what would work to bridge to thread this needle. Actually, now that I think about it,
because I think the problem also that Warren was she, she got too in the weeds with what she was doing. Like her Medicare plan, where it was like, I'm going to do this for 3 years and then I'm going to get it in the 4th year. It's like, no, you're not. That's not going to how it's going to work.
Not at all. But everybody, what do you think about what I just said about the Warren wonk with the Beto personality? Go ahead and drop me a comment on our Twitter, which I just shared with y'all now. I like to share memes, and whatever the hell I feel like going onto Twitter. So go ahead and hit us up on Twitter at crowdsourced poll. So yeah, I think we covered the Ohio 11th district special runoff race with between Nina Turner and Chantel Brown. What else should we talk about today? We have on the list, we covered vaccines, we covered that race. We have Cuomo, we have the infrastructure board.
We can talk about Cuomo very quickly.
Yeah, we could cover.
I can do Cuomo
quickly.
Than the infrastructure.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I'm a New Yorker.
Go for it. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm a New Yorker. When he resigned, it was right as I was prepping for stream. I do have like very easy word of advice for whoever's running for governor next. All you have to run on is changing the name of the bridge back to the Tappan Zee, and you're gonna win. That's all it is. That's really like legitimately all you have to do. As for this, there's two things to the Cuomo thing. One, his like reasoning and his apology were not real. And I do hope he is held accountable for, if not the sexual harassment stuff, at least for his him covering up the deaths in COVID. The other thing is the hypocrisy of this. If you think that Cuomo needs to be held solely accountable for all the deaths and stuff, and then the sexual harassment, but you support Trump, Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, who else am I? I'm missing one of them. Oh, Roy Moore. On that end, you don't have the leg to stand on. If you're okay with Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and how they're responding to COVID when it clearly is not working in the right way, you don't have the leg to stand on. You have to be consistent to say that, if somebody screws this up, they deserve to be punished for it. And I do think that there needs to ultimately be some type of investigation across the board to figure out like what happened that there were so many failures that led to the 600,000 plus deaths that we had to hit. So how do we, so some type of investigation. So ultimately it comes down to hypocrisy. If you're not going to hold your side accountable, you can't cheer when the other side holds their accountable. And and there's obviously like niche cases, because the cases that I point out are just the most prolific ones. But there have been Republican politicians who've been held accountable. Is it the same way? No, but it is. I'm happy he's gone, and we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. One of the things that is interesting to me though is this whole idea of the hypocrisy thing. It really is a matter of no one actually giving a shit about hypocrisy, or at least not enough people to matter. What it is all about trying to score points for your side and expose the other person as being weak and not as morally upstanding as they try to be. No one likes smug asshole, and so that's why everybody likes to point out hypocrisy. But I really wish that people would just stop. As a joke, like, haha, you're a hypocrite, whatever, fine. But as like a political point, no one actually cares. And it's become so much a shtick on the right to point at hypocrisy, wildly gesture at all the hypocrisy that's going on, that it's a tired statement at this point. I actually got banned by Rob Noor for calling him out on this during his stream.
I can't watch his streams.
I watched it for all of like a few minutes, and it was just one long rant about like how everybody's hypocritical. And I was like, I just typed at him like, stop talking about hypocrisy. You don't actually give a shit. No one gives a shit. Just stop. And he's like, well, I guess I can ban you then. But I mean, it is what it is, right? And I can't deal with it anymore. I really can't. So I don't bring it up.
Yeah, I only brought it up just because it broke, and I'm a New Yorker. And the other thing is this is what I say to people who like pop up into this chat, because actually that happened to me with this guy who's like, all you lefties, you're all the same to, all you do is say, oh, my data, and then you don't care about what we say. I was like, first off, this is a little bit of a tangent. Anyone who is a right winger is always welcome into my stream. I just asked if you're going to have an argument with me based on some type of data to actually give me the data when you're making that argument. So I can see what the sources that we're actually arguing for. And my response to that guy was, well, first, you haven't actually given me any information for me to tell you that you're wrong. The second thing is like, you can't just make broad strokes about it. If you're going to say the first thing you always have to do is follow up with the question is like, if they're talking about, all this Cuomo stuff is bad, say, look, yes, it is bad, but do you hold your side accountable? And then they say no, and it's like, okay, well, then you really don't have a leg to stand on. But I agree with you. It's fun to get the political points, but if you're not going to hold your side accountable, it's just hypocritical.
We do have a comment coming in basically saying that we're doing what they do. Stop it. Like we're you have to be consistent. Also Clinton, JFK, etc. Don't deflect from things. I don't think we're deflecting from Cuomo right now so much as saying that I don't care if somebody else calls him out if they themselves aren't going to be consistent in calling other people out. I think and I don't think that really very many people actually, like I said, I don't think very many people actually give a shit. And so it's more along the lines of, did somebody do something bad that warrants them being kicked off, resigned, or what have you, based on your own moral compass? If the answer is yes, then like you said, be consistent. But I don't think it should be a thing where you like pound someone's head over with, oh, you're just being a hypocrite. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like, I don't care if someone's being a hypocrite. Did what they do warrant them being in trouble or something? Yes, good. Hold them accountable. If yes, and they're just going to be like, well, you're not doing accountability. Shut up. No one gives a shit. That's all I'm saying.
Well, also, so there's two things to that. One, whoever that was clearly didn't hear the first thing I said, because the first thing I said was, I'm happy Cuomo resigned, and I hope he is held responsible for at least the sexual harassment, if not for his inability to handle COVID and his covering it up. And that's another thing that I like. People, they hear what they think what you're going to say and not what you actually said. I actually had that somebody else I was doing a thing on Candace Owens, and I finished it. Like the last thing I said was, I think she's a bad person. And they're like, well, that's what you said to everything. I was like, no, you're not listening to a single thing I've said, because I was literally the last point, and you were there for all of it. But like, look, I want them to be held accountable. And there's different, like, when you talk about different types of people being held accountable, there's the obvious answer comes up to the Virginia governor with the blackface stuff. How do you argue that versus what happened with Cuomo? Well, I mean, the Cuomo stuff is clearly worse. And does the Virginia governor need to does the governor Northam need to resign because of something that happened? I think it was like his college yearbook.
It was college, yeah.
Yeah, like how do you are those things? Are you weighing those things equally? Like in hindsight, it's if he apologizes and it's not a consistent thing, I think it's not as bad. But that's just where I stand.
Sure.
But, I don't. That's where my question would be. It's like, where do you, if you're going to complain about cancel culture stuff, where do you draw the line on something like that?
I do think this person does bring up a good point that we haven't talked enough about what he's been accused of. To be honest with you, though, maybe it isn't me. I haven't read as much about this as I should. So from what I've read, I basically did a quick read of the report, the AG report, and what it seems to me, I'm not spinning, dude. Stop. Anyways, what it seems to me is that at the very least, he was being a creepy old dude. And doing that in the workplace isn't something that's tolerated anymore. And so for that alone, he should be held accountable, and resigning and potentially being impeached for those things is being held accountable. Some of the other things that he's been accused of, with sexual assault, I have not read, like I said, everything that happened. But what I did read, it was things like touching, but not. He was accused of grabbing someone's ass. He was accused of being aggressively physically flirtatious with kissing and asking women if they could help him find a girlfriend. Saying that he likes women that are into pain or something like that as well. And these are things that are not at all acceptable in terms of what should happen at the workplace, especially by a boss. And so that alone, he should get sued. At the very least, he should be sued for sexual harassment. If not sexual assault, if these other things turn out to be as true as the AG thinks that they were. So those are things that we should that shouldn't be a thing that happen anymore. We shouldn't accept that. So that is what he's been accused of, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, that was mostly, there was a couple other ones. He like aggressively traced the design on one of the women's breasts. There was something with there was one of them with one of his state troopers that he did something with. And I think that's the one that is actually just suing him currently. There's a lot of stuff. It's at the very least, it's not acceptable. And look, we have now said this multiple times that it's not acceptable. The answer is, when faced with these similar, if not worse, arguments when it came to Donald Trump, did you wave them away? And it's not a whataboutism. That's a legitimate question. Because when I heard, Donald Trump had 26 women accuse him of sexual assault or harassment, and the Access Hollywood tape, did you wave that away as boys talk? And if you did, then how is what Cuomo did not acceptable? Because let's be clear, I really do believe if Andrew Cuomo was a Republican, he would be 1A or 1B in their presidential polling right now for 2024, because he didn't do a great job with COVID and he sexually harassed somebody. Those things don't seem to matter.
Very true. I do think we covered that decently, if not decently acceptably, as maybe not as extensive as we should. Maybe I should come on later and do a whole read of the entire report. But we are pressed for time, so we should go on and continue. We should talk about the infrastructure bill, and then with the infrastructure bill, also the $3.2 trillion budget reconciliation process, since this is a dual track thing. As everybody should know, the Senate has passed a it's just 1 trillion, right? 1.2 trillion
for that one, and the other one is 3.5.
Yeah. So $1.2 trillion deal reached with 10 Republicans. 19 actually voted for it, including Mitch McConnell, which is interesting enough. He stuck his finger in Trump's eye, so that was fun. But with that. With that being passed, we see that it's actually being held up in the House to a degree because of the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation. A lot of what progressives wanted in the infrastructure bill, it had gotten cut away in order to pass through the Senate without having to worry about a filibuster. So now what we're seeing is that progressives and moderate Democrats have to come together, get some synergy, and reach a deal in order to get the budget reconciliation passed through the Senate with only 50 votes. What about it?
So look, the ultimate thing is you're right. This deal is only going to be as good as whatever Joe Manchin and AOC can agree on. That's what's going to have to bridge. The reason they had to take this 2-track deal was because the people like Sinema and Manchin had to, they had to be like one step away from where the main party is for their bona fides. The problem was the 1.2, while it is a historical investment, is over 5 years. So it comes down to about $110 billion a year in funding for that. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a lot, but it is not. So let's say they also pass the 3.5 as it is. The 3.5 is over 10 years. So every year we're looking at a combined $4.6 billion in infrastructure spending, which, sounds a lot until you realize that's about half of what we spend every single year on the military. The amount of issues that this requires, because Joe Manchin said he wanted something close to 4. This would be around 4, a little more than 4, depending on what else he wants to cut out. There are some truly important things and issues that need to be solved in this bill. The climate stuff, they can't put enough money in funding into it fast enough, in my opinion. I like if we have to cut some of the pre-K stuff or a little bit about something else to put more into climate, I think that's just more pressing. And you know what? Fight me over it. That's where I feel. I'm not saying these things aren't important. I'm saying I think that is where the true issues that we need to focus on. But the bills, they've changed. The 1.2 originally had a lot more privatization in it than it does now. The 3.5 is not just what progressives want. A lot of what's in there is what Joe Biden originally wanted in his 2.5 deal anyway. So the fact that we're at 3.5 when originally the starting point was 6 is a compromise, and we're probably coming down. I think ultimately it would be somewhere between 2.5 and 3. I hope that the stuff that isn't cut is the green stuff, because we're desperately in need of that. But this is where the fight is, and this is the other thing that really is just unbelievably baffling in this bill is the fact that they didn't include raising the budget ceiling. So, like even in 2011, when there was the threat that we might go over it, had huge ripples in the markets and stuff. And it was the first time that the U.S. credit rating was downgraded. So the fact that we're now going to have to agree with Republicans, to get 10 Republicans to agree with us on this is a problem that we shouldn't have to deal with. And even more than that, if you think even further long term, is what happens when Joe Biden, let's say in 2023, has to extend the debt ceiling and Republicans control the House? You don't know that you don't know what type of crazy demands they're going to make. So the way they really should be dealing with this is either extend it for the next, say, it just automatically extends for the next 5 years so that Joe Biden can make it through at least his first term, or just do it themselves. Because the way the budget ceiling works is it doesn't allow the government to spend more money. It allows the government to spend the money it has already allocated. So it's already paying the bills that we've done. This is not saying your budget is $100, now it's $110. It's you've budgeted to $100, you have to pay that $100. It's us paying what we owe. So that's where I think it's a fault. It's a game of chicken. I don't think they should be playing. I really hope they're tougher on Manchin for this. And here's the other thing. For all the people who are saying, good for Joe Manchin's bipartisanship when he wants to blow up the American Rescue Plan or blow up some other deal because he's doing it for his constituents, which isn't true. You have to say the same thing if progressives are wielding their power. Everyone gets to, both sides have the ability to wield their power because of how tight the stuff is. If that's part of being politics, if there's enough progressives to blow up the bipartisan bill because they're not happy with what Joe Manchin is doing for the Senate bill, you have to respond to it the same way. Either Joe Manchin doesn't get to do it, or the progressives get to do it as well. You can't have it one way. He can't go out of his, legitimately, it is this idea that bipartisan is helping is just wrong. Just look at the things that Joe Manchin has done. Every time Joe Manchin has touched a bill, it's become objectively worse. It just has. And, if that's where he's going to run with this, we have to have they have to be ready to possibly lose it. It's
a lot to chew on. they're probably going to try to avoid having to raise the budget ceiling through funding mechanisms within the budget reconciliation bill that's being tacked on. This is probably instances where they're going to raise taxes that they couldn't get through the infrastructure deal, since the infrastructure deal didn't have any raise in taxes on corporations or anything of that nature. We're repealing the Trump tax cuts or any of that stuff. I do hear your point about every bill that Joe Manchin has touched has become worse at least in terms of what the liberals and left would want. If that is the only way it can make it through Congress, example being the infrastructure bill itself, I'm okay with that to a degree. Not for necessarily the budget reconciliation. So what I've said has basically happened with this whole entire process. So what I think is going to happen is that we have 1.9 for the stimulus, with 1.2 for the infrastructure bill, 500 billion for the chip thing, which I consider to be infrastructure, but nobody else does. But I'm going to say that anyways. And then what we're going to end up seeing is probably around 2 trillion come out of the budget reconciliation process of new spending. And that will be the 4 trillion that Manchin was comfortable with. But in that 4 trillion number, in that new 2 trillion spending, we're going to probably see things like child care credits or beefing up childcare. We're going to see investments into green energy. We're going to see payoffs for Joe Manchin and his wife in order to get these things through. Kirsten Sinema as well. We're going to see investments into green energy. We're going to see investments into schools. We'll probably get universal pre-K out of it. We might not get universal 2-year community college, but it still pushes the ball so far forward that I can't complain if it comes out to the 2 trillion. I think it's going to. And I really don't think, complain, but don't let your complaints be so loud that it causes people to be second guess voting for it, I guess is where I'm at with it.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. Look, if it ends up with 2, we go, okay, here's the things that we won. We got X, Y, Z. We got the green energy stuff.
Yeah.
This is what we need to fight for next time. This is the base. We've hit the base floor of it. That's where our starting point is for next time. We've moved the Overton window so far to the left on this. We've moved what's comfortable for. We have to start. The true issue will ultimately come with how willing are they to sink the entirety of it? Because I don't think they're going to sink the entirety of it. It's what is an acceptable amount of spending, and then some type of combination of these will be through. What the ultimate numbers are we don't know. And then the truth of it is, unless we deal with some actual voter reform to deal with what's happening, this is probably going to be the last true bill that Joe Biden passes, unless something crazy happens and we keep control of both the House and the Senate during the midterm. Although I think we do actually have a decent shot in the House, or in the Senate, not in the House so much. But
you think we have a decent shot keeping the Senate?
I think we're defending less seats, and I think there's more of a toss up for us. I think that's just the last I've looked at it. But look, my true fear is, if it's 51-49,
right.
Senators, if it's for the Republicans, I think there's a chance Kirsten Sinema switches parties.
You think so?
I legitimately watching what she ran on versus what she's saying now. There's no larger about face. I don't think she ends up the next time she runs as a Democrat. Maybe she's an independent, but I don't think she's going to be a Democrat by the next time she's up for reelection, because everything she says is antithetical to what she ran on. And the Democrats, according to the polling in Arizona, they hate her. And I legitimately, she's underwater in every metric for Democrats in Arizona. I don't know what she would do in the next. I think she's up at 24 in the next couple of years that would change that. Yeah. Especially if we don't have power.
Interesting. I'm going to have to do an analysis on that I think I'll do that. I'll do that one by myself. Sometime next week maybe. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. I didn't consider her potentially switching parties. She's more likely to, if what you say is true, than Joe Manchin is, because Joe Manchin has that loyalty in that I'm an old school Labor Democrat, and she just doesn't have that. She's not old enough to have that sense of pride in everything that she's done. So interesting.
Yeah, Joe Manchin's not like gonna switch party. He's just like realistic. Really, he's just corrupt, but he's not like going to. I mean, that's really like, if you tie it back to the money, you can tie his family's financing to like every decision that he's made.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm not gonna argue with you on that. I do think that being from West Virginia makes him have to be
right.
More
that is part of it too. But like the polling for the things that his people want, whether they're independent, Democrat, or Republican, are also against the things that he's voting for. So he's not even representing their industry. Like if you look into like the $15 minimum wage, he has a lot of businesses in West Virginia that have that don't have $15 minimum wage, and he would lose money on that. There's he gets money from the fossil fuel industry, and that's part of why he's against the green energy stuff. His daughter is involved in closing down some of the Medicaid, the places that make medicine in West Virginia, and that's part of why he's against. He didn't fight as hard to protect them.
Okay, no, I'm not. You're being more than fair here. So, yeah, it would not surprise me. After all, one of the things that we ended up seeing was that his wife was assigned to the Virginia Development Board or something along those lines, and they just got an injection of money from the infrastructure bill to design it, so she'll be in control of that money, essentially. So yeah, it wouldn't at all surprise me if it's ranked corruption. But that would be par for the course, right? For history's sake, anyways. Like, that's where pork barreling comes from. You have to barrel everything together and grease the sticky wheels to get things moving. And honestly, as much as I hate corruption, I do think we should bring pork barreling back so that we get things passed more often. Give Alaska some more oil money. Give Kansas, I don't know what the fuck's in Kansas, corn subsidies. Like, I don't care. Like, get it passed. Get people money. Like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we like to do on the news roundup is a little segment that we call a little segment that we like to call News of the Weird. So for this week's News of the Weird, and I have to get it up, we're going to look at, and hold on a second, I have to navigate. I gotta get used to this program. So add to C1. All right. So this week we are going to cover. Come on. Pop up. Uh-oh. Oh no. Okay, remove, add, and then hide. All right, we're going to cover the slice of cake from Princess Diana Prince Charles wedding sells for $2,500. So I'm just going to read the little article, and then we can,
How old is this cake? 19. Fuck.
19. So I'm going to read the article because I like to read them live on air, and then we'll talk about what this potentially means for society or whatever. So August 12th, a slice of cake from Princess Diana and Prince Charles' 1981 wedding has been auctioned for $2,565. Private collector Jerry Layton from Leeds, England, purchased the slice through Dominic Winter Auctioneers, located in Winchester, England. The slice of cake weighs about 28 ounces and was preserved inside plastic wrap and a cake tin. The slice features a coat of arms design along with decorative icing. It comes from one of the 23 official cakes that were made for the royal wedding and was given to Moria Smith, an employee of the Queen's mother at Clarence House at the time. The item was sold to Dominic Winter Auctioneers on behalf of the Smith family in 2008. The late Princess Diana and Prince Charles were married at St. Paul's Cathedral in London on July 29th, 1981. And that is end of that. So yeah, what does that say about our love affair with people, with people of celebrity status and everything else?
Well, first, we didn't end up seeing a picture of the cake. I don't think, right?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't on the site.
So the begets the next question is, how good is that Tupperware that cake hasn't been destroyed in 40 plus years?
Okay, my wife and I actually did the whole like, let's save a cake and try to like eat it like 6 months later or a year later or whatever. It was absolutely disgusting. It was the worst piece of sweet I had ever tried to taste in my life, and we ended up throwing it away. We had so much cake left over too. It was gross.
And you did that for 6 months.
It was like 6 months, yeah.
But like, did it have its like shape and stuff? Was it like very clearly?
Yeah, it was we froze it. Like it still maintained its shape and everything. It just
all right. So I mean, obviously you're not eating 40-year-old cake. The question is what is how much of the shape stuff does it maintain?
Okay. Yeah, I actually found a picture of it. Crap, sharing this is actually a chore.
Yeah, because look, it's people will pay for anything. There was I think Drake one time sold off some lint he picked off of Steph Curry's hair or something. It's like like people will buy whatever. I think what's his face? The William Shatner. I know he said this as part of a roast, but I don't know if it's true or not. I think he said he sold like a kidney stone for like $70,000. So, I mean, that's something like.
Oh, hold on.
Terrible condition.
Yeah, it's not terrible. The people that are watching from home can't really see it right now, so let me try to like pull it up bigger for them. Actually, we can do it this way. So highlight guest. All right, so we're off the screen now, and then there we go.
I mean, that's not bad. It's just like it's a weird. Look, you can say I have a piece of Princess Diana's, and Prince Charles cake. Cool, man. Like, you win the oddest celebrity memorabilia party trinket, whatever that you're playing. That's about it.
Right. Oh, okay. I'm not going to use this program anymore, I don't think, because it's not like loading. There it goes. But yeah, so that's the cake. I think what it says is, like you were saying, people will buy anything as long as it's connected to some sort of celebrity status for collectors and mementos or whatever. If there's another interesting thing where vintage video games are actually super in vogue right now. So people are buying up in Japan like every single PlayStation and Xbox One game they can get their hands on for collectors status, and it's driving the prices through the roof. So it was pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, that's like the new vinyl when vinyl came back and people were purchasing vinyl again. It's all, people get nostalgic, so they buy stuff up like that.
Yep. So Terrifying Panda said, maybe someone will eat it like Elaine ate the 29K piece of cake in Seinfeld that was supposed to be from Edward VII's wedding. Yeah, that would be great. Maybe we can get a Binsky out of it, right? We get that somebody eats it and it'll, I don't know. It has a slice of bread in it. Yeah, but still, it was so gross. Space Jam remake logic. Yes. North Countryman. Yes. Very, very true.
I haven't seen that yet. My brother saw it. I've been told the best way to watch that movie is not to consider it a sports movie, but to consider it a video games movie.
Oh, I could see that. All right. Let's see. What else do we need to cover on the news this week? You got anything on your mind? Did you want to cover?
No. I think we've hit pretty much everything.
We could talk about the possible the extension of the eviction moratorium and whether or not that was needed. I guess we could talk about that, but I think you're right. We've covered quite a bit.
I mean, we could talk about that very quickly. It's pretty.
Let's go for it. So let's wrap it up with that. So as everybody should know, the Biden administration through the CDC has extended the eviction moratorium and has started putting a pressure on states to release the money that that was in the stimulus bill that passed, the 1.9 trillion stimulus bill passed to get renters assistance in order to make people whole as possible. But there's still fear that there will be millions of people evicted and causing a possible homelessness crisis. Thoughts?
Well, look, there's two things. So the Biden administration absolutely dropped the ball on this. And so about a month before it expired, they won a Supreme Court case, in which case this is where people always argue, about the legality of it. In which case, Kavanaugh wrote, like, it wasn't even an opinion. It was like a subnote. He wrote, it was like, look, I'm only siding with this because this is only extended for another month. But should this come back to in front of us, I'm going to rule against you. Now, what he said there was not binding. It's
True.
not, he didn't make an opinion about it. So what Joe Biden did is not illegal until it makes it back up to the Supreme Court. Now, in knowing this a month in advance and knowing that basically the Senate is doing whatever they were doing for the bipartisan bill, the House really wasn't doing much. They should have told the House, you need to pass the extension of this. And the House could have done it, and the Senate could have ultimately, moved it back, whatever it was. That could have been a fight on the other side. However, what they did do was 3 days before the moratorium lifted, the House they were like, hey, Congress, you should do it. In which case, it was 2 days? Okay. In which case, like 20. Yeah, vacation. In which case, like 20 moderate Democrats were like, listen, we're going home. We're going to vote no against this if you bring it up. So they went home. So there was no one to do it. So the only way that the Biden administration could do it was through the CDC. So technically, it is still legal for what they did. The answer then would be for them to pass a bill between now and whenever it gets challenged again to the Supreme Court to actually enshrine it to law. At which case he can withdraw the CDC's moratorium, and it would be whatever the law is that would be take place over. So it is not correct to say that what he did was unconstitutional, because that wasn't actually a ruling. It is correct to say that they dropped the ball on it, though.
No, I think that's very fair on that. What I'm not sure of, and this is something that I've tried to look up and I haven't been able to find much in the way of information, and I consider myself a great Googler, but that doesn't mean I just failed at looking this up. So please check me on it if you have information. Is that I can't actually see, I couldn't find any definitive answer about how many people actually will face eviction with this. Not just face eviction, but will go homeless because the evictions happen. When I mean by homeless, I mean like maybe there were like 2 weeks between places and then they find a place. Like, I don't consider that homelessness. I consider that, temporarily. Like the way I think of homelessness is like sustained homelessness. But I couldn't find any information about where that number is actually coming from and how likely it is to cause sustained homelessness. Did you find anything about that?
I don't know about sustained homelessness, but I think the number of people who would lose housing, I think, was somewhere between 6 and 11 million people.
Yeah, but where does that number come from?
I haven't actually looked into where that number came from.
That's what I'm getting at. I'm not sure where that's coming from. And everything I've seen that I've been able to find is that it's coming from a combination of estimates, how many landlords are saying that have not been paid rent, and things like that. So things that aren't as concrete as one would like them to be, in my opinion. Now, this isn't to say that the moratorium shouldn't happen. I think it should, especially since people were out of work for so long and the government didn't do anything to ensure that people's rents were paid, especially unless, they did things like extend the unemployment, made it to where they had the 2-bedroom apartment being added to everybody's unemployment. But there was issues with that across different states about states not giving that money to everybody, which is another thing I don't think that should even be allowed. Like, I don't think that should be allowed. But I'm not sure that the crisis is necessarily as dire as people might make it out to be because of that. I'm not saying that it isn't, but I'm saying that I'm not as sure as I once was.
No, that's interesting. I mean, it's not like look, it's not like we can't house the people who are already homeless.
For sure. We have the space.
So
there's more
and
housing.
it's not like even, and I think even for the fact that say just because we can do it or these people deserve to pay for it is something that should happen. It's also, we do have to take in consideration the ultimate reason why we need this is not just because we're saying, oh, people don't have to pay rent. We're saying, you know, if you're not in a home, it's significantly harder to deal with this pandemic in general. So it's a more complicated issue. That is an interesting thought about, you know, where the numbers come from that I would probably have to look into. I don't even know where that would, who would do that, but that should be something that people, you know, have squirreled away somewhere.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. It makes me less worried that it's going to happen, but extending the moratorium is still a good idea to prevent that from happening. Like, it's one of those situations where like, so someone skims off their rent for like a couple of months. Whatever. Like, the government can make the landlords whole fairly easily if it wanted to, and it should have. But like, it's something that's going to end up having to happen. So I'm not terribly worried about them getting their money. So that's why I'm not worried about it having that. We have a comment coming in. I wish homeless would be better worded. I was technically homeless for 6 years, yet I never slept on the streets, slept in the van and at people's places, yet never homeless. Yeah, I understand that. Maybe it isn't me. That's true.
Isn't because Cory Bush is described as unhoused. I think that's the phrase that people is as unhoused people. I think that's where it's a different definition.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's a good point as well. Fresh faces. But yeah, I think that's a wrap, everybody. So Fresh Faces, go ahead and shout yourself out. Tell everybody where they can get you, and we'll give it a close.
All right. My name's Fresh Faces New Ideas. I stream usually 1 p.m. EST during the week. I will be doing another panel this weekend. If you want to find me, you can find me at twitch.tv/Fresh Faces New Ideas, or you can find me on Twitter at Faces Ideas. I have the links to everything there. You can also find me on YouTube at Fresh Faces New Ideas. And I have an Instagram, but it's irrelevant because I don't use it. But yeah, I literally only have it because some of the podcasts that I'm on, they promote it through Instagram, and it's easier than using my actual name.
For sure. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Thursday News Roundup from the Crowdsourced Politics podcast crew. If this is the first time you've ever joined us, we are a podcast born out of a funky little debate community on Facebook, turned podcast, turned political commentators, and that is what you're watching here. We hope to do these every week, and we usually do unless I'm on vacation or something happens. And we will, if you want to come onto the program, these are open. We are set up for this as kind of a Diane Rehm Friday News Roundup kind of thing. If you will listen to NPR, the 1A does the Friday News Roundup. This is kind of the idea. I wanted to bring people from all across the political spectrum, the debate groups on Facebook, the politics commenters on Twitch and YouTube or where have you, onto a platform so we could all talk about the news and give the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. So if that's the kind of things that you like and you're interested in doing this, go ahead and join our Discord community, which the link is coming at you. You can find it on the top right hand corner on both YouTube and Facebook. And yeah, we hope to see you around. And as always, keep your head up through the political storm. All right. And you still streaming? Oh, I'll just raid you then. Oh. Okay. Sure. Bye.